Every time I come into the church building since the coronavirus halted our church activities, I feel tremendous sadness. Our building, usually occupied by people or having remnants of recent occupation, stands silent and empty. It's an unexplainable feeling of abandonment to me. The first time I entered this sanctuary, after cancellation became necessary, I walked slowly and silently down the center aisle to the communion table, holding a basket of communion bread. It can be used when we resume services because each little morsel is contained in a sterile little container, neat and tidy and clean, ready for our weekly ritual. On Thursday, Jesus sent 2 disciples out to prepare the Passover meal for his group of followers. Because Judas was not one of the disciples sent out, he couldn't alert the authorities about the location, so the group was able to eat undisturbed. That evening, Jesus and his disciples gathered for the meal. As they ate, Jesus told them that one of them would betray him, which caused great distress for each as they questioned whether they were the one. Then, Mark tells us in 14:22 through 25, while they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body." He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, and they all drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. I assure you that I won't drink wine again until that day when I drink it in a new way in God's kingdom." The group sat down to eat a meal together: connection, fellowship, sharing. 3 important elements we are missing right now with our social distancing. Then Jesus spoke about his betrayal by one, when actually each one would betray him in his own way, as is so typical of most of us. I wonder, as Jesus talked about his body and blood, whether he felt the emptiness of this sanctuary and the abandonment of silent service. The Passover meal with the accompanying liturgy reminded the participant of God's hand in liberating the Hebrew slaves from Egyptian bondage. In ancient Egypt, the night they fled, each Hebrew family slaughtered a lamb, applied some of the blood over the door to ensure that the angel of death didn't visit their home, and then the rest of the lamb was eaten, giving them energy for the journey the next day. As Jesus and his followers ate their Passover meal, Jesus tried to symbolically tell them that he would no longer be with them to continue their ministry. It was up to them to carry the good news of the kingdom of God to the people, and they could do it with God's protection and strength for the journey, symbolized in the bread and the wine of the Passover meal. After the meal, Jesus and his followers went to the Mount of Olives. Hear what Mark tells us in verses 32 through 42. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that, if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, "Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." He came and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Silent, empty, abandoned by his friends, the only one Jesus could count on for strength for the journey and protection was God. In the final verses of this passage, Mark described the arrest, trial, and conviction of Jesus, while his followers denied knowing him and ran away. I love to come to the communion table each Sunday with fresh morsels of bread and juice, neatly lined up deacons, perfectly executed liturgy, and meaningful music to accompany it. These sterile little containers illustrate our usual Sunday ritual: neat, sterile, contained. But the first Lord's Supper was none of these. Silent, empty, abandoned, and distraught, Jesus looked to God for strength and protection.